What happens in your mind when you're falling in love and what happens in your mind in limerence are identical. And this is why it can be so confusing for people, whether they're in limerence or whether they are actually falling in love or have already fallen in love with someone. So I'm going to go through the signs of falling in love. And these are the exact same signs as limerence. So basically, I'm just clarifying that the cognitive processes, the things that go through your mind in love and limerence are identical. And a bit later in this video, I'm going to clarify what is the difference when it's actually love, what's really happening compared to limerence. So when you find yourself falling in love, it is super exciting. You find yourself completely preoccupied by this person. You can't stop thinking about them. Your mood is impacted by them, and you're physically attracted to them. You start to feel some kind of increased energy, perhaps a feeling of euphoria. You start doing some future planning, either with them or at least some ideas in your mind. And of course, you experience jealousy, either by the idea of them getting with someone else, or if it seems like another person is a threat in relation to your romantic connection between yourself and this other person. These are all signs that you are falling in love. And the problem is, these are all signs of limerence as well. So then how do you know when it's limerence and when it's love? Well, what will happen in the early stages of love and limerence, your cognitive processes will go in this direction. You're preoccupied by this person, you're excited, you fantasize about them, you ponder over time spent with them, you might replay conversations you've had with them in your mind, you get really excited and enthusiastic around them, or maybe a bit nervous around them. You can't wait to see them again. And actually, you stop thinking about your duties and your responsibilities. So you're a bit distracted at work. Other things might not seem as exciting as being with this person. So you become a bit preoccupied. Now, in true love, all of that stuff settles down pretty soon. And the reason why that stuff settles down pretty soon is because you start living out the relationship. And as you're living out the relationship, you no longer can idolize your partner so much because they start to show up as a real person. That means they start to show their flaws. They start to kind of annoy you a little bit or disappoint you or do things that are not so ideal. And then you start to see that actually, even though you adore this person and you are falling in love with them and you love them, they're flawed as a human. They're a real human, and you're going to have to navigate this relationship in relation to negotiating your needs. And you're going to start communicating with them, communicating your disappointments, seeing them as a real person who has great strengths and weaknesses. And then you start to navigate the relationship. How can you set your boundaries? How do you deal with disappointments? How do you deal with conflict? And then this person, because they're also falling in love with you, they show up to have those conversations with you. They will be very interested in your opinion of them. They'll be very sensitive to your needs. They'll be very sensitive to your disappointments. They'll be sensitive to when they've let you down, and they'll show up to deal with those challenges as it happens. So real life starts taking place, and then there's a lot happening in the relationship, a lot of toing and froing. There'll be days when you are in a really good mood and your partner not so much. There'll be days when your partner is in a really good mood and you not so much. And you start to understand one another. You get a lot more examples from a lot of time spent together. You're constantly kind of looking at one another and navigating that relationship together. So the black and white thinking of this idealization that you found the perfect person gets all balanced out by real life. Real life examples of a real human making mistakes and this person not being this fantasy of the person that you initially thought that you had met. And you accept this because you have fallen in love with the person. So you see their flaws, you go through the times when they're not being so ideal, and you just navigate that. And you're like, oh, okay, I don't maybe have the same butterflies that I had in the beginning because some things have happened, but I still love this person. My values are so in line with the values I have for a relationship are so in line with this person that yes, they may disappoint me from time to time. Yes, they may not be perfect all of the time, but I'm in a real relationship with a real person, and we are just figuring out how to combine our lives together, how to merge our lives together. Now with limerence, there is no figuring out how to merge your lives together, because this person, the object of your desire, your fantasy, the person that you've been infatuating over, is not reciprocating the romance. They are not interested in having a relationship with you. So therefore, when they disappoint you, they don't show up to have those conversations. When they disappoint you, they're not sensitive to your emotional needs. They don't notice when there's something wrong. So this person is not reciprocating the relationship. There's not a balance of figuring each other's personalities out and figuring out how to navigate conflict, figuring out how to navigate the relationship when things go wrong. So having a realistic view of one another never happens because there's not enough time spent, because there's not two people reciprocating in order to try and have a relationship. So therefore, this infatuation that everyone feels when they're falling in love, you're left with that infatuation for a very long time. So essentially, your brain freezes in time. You go through the process of falling in love, which is the exact same as someone who's truly falling in love. And then the person is not reciprocating. So then you don't end up evolving into the next stage of the relationship. Your brain just kind of freezes in that moment of time and it replays over and over and over. It's like Groundhog Day. It's like just all of those thoughts, feelings. And these are absolutely key innate ways that we have within us that we need in order to truly be able to fall in love. So actually what's happening for you is you're just going into what happens for everyone when they're falling in love: infatuation, desire, excitement, a strong attraction towards this other person. Because of your attachment difficulties, you don't recognize when the relationship is not being reciprocated. You don't take the hints of someone not being interested. You don't stick with your standards of how you want to be treated. So you give far too much leeway. And when the person is not reciprocating or they leave you with uncertainty, you're not taking the uncertainty as the actual message of, I don't want to be with you. So for example, someone messaged me last week and said, oh, the person that I'm infatuated with has gone on and found another relationship. I have never had closure. I still feel a huge amount of limerence for them, and they've never explained what's happened. They've never given me my closure, so I don't really know where they're at. And what I replied to this person was their non-communication, them not communicating with you any further, is them giving you certainty. It's them giving you a very strong message: I am not interested. And with limerence, people don't take the message of silence or the lack of reciprocation as, oh, that person is not interested, therefore rein it in, my infatuation stops then, move on to available partner. So the butterflies that people are feeling in limerence, everyone feels those butterflies when they meet someone that they are strongly attracted to and that they start getting to know. But as soon as someone is not reciprocating, they're not interested, the non-limerence individual will cease all cognitive stuff at this point. They will stop the infatuation and go, oh, okay, disappointing, but they're not interested in me. And they accept things like silence or a lack of action as their answer. They accept it as certainty, whereas the limerent person says, oh, I'm not certain. Maybe they're just not behaving like they're interested in me. Like maybe in their minds, they're far more interested in me than they're giving me signs of. How do I really know? So actually the need for certainty and not taking the lack of action as certainty is something that someone with limerence is really troubled by. So if you have been experiencing limerence and you've been really confused about whether it is true love or not, don't give yourself a hard time about it, because what happens in the mind when falling in love is exactly the same as in limerence. The only problem is limerence lingers and it goes on for far too long, and it goes on when love is not being reciprocated. So in order to know whether you have limerence or whether you're truly falling in love, just ask yourself the question of what happens when challenges happen in the relationship. Do the two of you work through those challenges together, overcome them, and get to the next stage? Or do you never really get to have those conversations? And is that person actually not reciprocating your feelings and sensitive to your feelings? One thing to mention is that although what's cognitively going on in your mind when you're falling in love and when you're falling in limerence is identical, as the limerence starts to continue and it's becoming more of an established limerence and it's becoming clear to you that this is not love, your subconscious picks up on it. And that's where your anxiety levels raise. And that's where the preoccupation starts to go into an obsessive nature. And that's where you really start to lose focus and you can't concentrate at all on your work. And the volume of thoughts that you're having about the object of your affection or obsession gets out of control. So I would say one way of differentiating, and when you're starting to realize that actually this is moving into a limerence and it is absolutely limerence and not you falling in love, is the volume of thoughts and how much control you have over it. Because when you're in love and you have all of these positive feelings, you're happy, you're elated, and you can feel really good in yourself and you can return to focus. As limerence really establishes as an absolute limerence, on a subconscious level, you know you're in danger. You know this person is unavailable and that it doesn't feel safe. And it not feeling safe is going to manifest in your mind. So although the very early stages of limerence are identical to what's happening when falling in love, as limerence starts to go on, you will pick up on the anxiety that actually this person isn't available, you don't feel safe, this is not an available partner. And that's where you try to problem solve in your mind. You try to figure it out. Is this person into me too? What's really going to happen in the future? Does this feel safe? Am I making the right decision? Is there a sign that they like me? How will I know? A lot of kind of toing and froing and an obsessive type of focus that is fueled by anxiety. And then where you start to notice that actually this is limerence and not love is that the preoccupation is linked to your feelings of uncertainty and linked to your anxiety and linked to the fact that you have gone for someone who is clearly telling you that they are not available. You always know that the limerent person truly is not available to you. Otherwise, they would have made it clearer. So while they might have shown some initial interest and they might have spent time with you, they might have genuinely been attracted to you, this person has not actually told you or given really clear signs that they're 100% available and they're going to show up for you and that they're interested in a serious way in pursuing something with you. They're going to be giving you either mixed messages or giving you clear messages that they're not actually available. And that's where your anxiety levels raise because you don't feel safe with this person. And then you get super preoccupied. And that's where what's happening in your mind is actually different to what's happening with love, because all these kind of exciting butterfly feelings and where you feel really good and elated turns into anxious preoccupation. And then we see that it's no longer love anymore, that these feelings of infatuation and positive mood when you think about the person and wanting the best for the person, all these lovely things are mixed with a lot of anxious preoccupation. Although I'm saying what's happening in your mind when you're falling in love and what's happening in your mind when you're falling into a limerence is the same thing, there is some warning signs when it's limerence that differentiate healthy love. And one of the warning signs is that it is infatuation times 100. So everything is sped up. So the obsessiveness and the intensity of everything is more profound than when someone is falling in love with a healthy partner. And the reason for this is that when someone is falling into limerence, intuitively, they are picking up on that partner that individual not being fully available to them. So their nervous system is actually registering anxiety, but you're not registering that on a conscious level. So therefore, the obsessive nature and the high that you're feeling is a limerent high. And it's a different type of high than when someone is falling into love that's going to lead to a healthy relationship. Because when someone is falling in love, that will lead to a healthy relationship, they feel really secure. And when someone is falling into limerence, they feel high in a drug-like way and they feel insecure. But they haven't registered that they're feeling insecure just yet at the very start of limerence. So when people are falling into limerence, they're too elated. Everything is too positive. They're idolizing their partner too much. Whereas when someone is falling into love, yes, they still have the rose-tinted glasses and they feel all this warm, fuzzy feeling of falling into love, but they can usually still come back to reality and be a bit careful about the situation and be a bit mindful of, oh, let's just wait and see, let's just see how things play out in the future. Whereas the high that people who experience limerence feel is so high, it is just incredibly drug-like. So same thing is happening in the mind as someone who's falling in love, but it's just far more intense and it's far more idolizing. They're idolizing the person far more. They're romanticizing the partnership far more, and it's just far more unrealistic. So although I'm saying it is the same thing that's happening in your mind, it's amplified in a way that is suspicious. So if you sit with someone who is starting to fall in love, they kind of smile and they kind of, look cheerful and they kind of are really happy about the situation, but they're more like, let's see. Yeah, it's really sweet. They're really lovely. I'm enjoying it. The person who's falling into limerence is like, oh my God, I can't believe the connection. I can't believe how perfect they are. I can't believe how we have all the same interests. I can't believe that we've been living parallel lives. When I was going through my last breakup, they were going through their last breakup. Oh my God, we're so the same. We're going to get a house in this place together. It's just, oh my God, it's just so amazing. So the person falling in love has this preoccupation and they have this excitement and they have this like, oh my God, this is something special, but they're not obsessed. Whereas the person falling into limerence is obsessed. You are seeing the same things go through the person falling in love's mind, the person falling in limerence, same kind of thing, but amplified by 100. It is just far more obsessive. So actually, when you sit with someone who's falling in love, you can share in their happiness far more easily than you can share into the delusion of someone who's falling into limerence, because you can see that it's delusional, or they might persuade you that it's realistic and you might be like, oh, okay, they're clearly very excited. It depends on how intuitive you are, but it's going to be very ideal. It's going to be someone idolizing an individual, whereas the person falling into healthy love, they're not idolizing the person. They can see their strengths, they can see their weaknesses, and they're hoping for the best, but they're not jumping the gun on things. Whereas the person falling into limerence is jumping the gun. And the person falling into limerence with someone who actually is going to use them, so for example, a gold digger or someone who is with them for the wrong reasons, is a very unsafe situation. So not all limerence is someone who is physically unavailable to them, who is refusing a relationship. Sadly, some people who fall into limerence get tricked into relationships where the person doesn't have empathy and they don't have the best intentions for that relationship. So people can really end up in relationships with the wrong people when they become limerent. I hope you found this video helpful. I'm Dr. Becky Spelman. Follow my channel for more content.